6v6 is here, and with it, tank combinations have returned. And there have been a lot of not only completely new tanks, but also a couple of reworked tanks since 6v6 was here last. I want to take this time to share with you a couple of tank combinations that I think that you should be using, or at least trying out during this test. So, what we are going to focus on here are kind of new combinations, but I do want to start this out with classic stuff. You may be new to Overwatch, you may not have played Overwatch 1, you may not have played with 2 tanks ever before, you may not be as familiar with some of those combinations that were pretty good, pretty staple. So right now I am playing Winston with a D.Va. Now when you do Overwatch 1, you think main tank and off tank for the most part. 99% of the time, that's how it's going to work. Your main tank goes in and initiates. They take the space. They put a lot of aggression. And then the off tank comes in and kind of bullies the space. Helps you keep it. Keeps places that the rest of your team can't get to. You know, contest them, right? So with Winston D.Va here, that's a classic composition. You could do Winston Zarya as well. Winston jumps in, he throws his bubble down, he dances around it, whatever. When his bubble breaks, you DM him, you give him a Zarya bubble, right? Then he gets to stay there longer, then he leaves, and then he does it all again, right? And that's kind of how you keep going and going and going. That is how you keep the aggression up. Other combinations, of course, you can play Reinhardt with any of the original off tanks, Zarya, D.Va, and Sigma. They all have their pluses. Zarya on very, very flat maps, I think is probably the best. D.Va, if you need to contest high grounds a lot. Sigma, if you have to cross longer distances or you have very congested chokes that you need to get through, he's very good at stopping those. But those are like traditional combinations, right? Other older combinations, you could do like a couple of the self-sufficient heroes like Sigma and Wrecking Ball and stuff, and Roadhog. Any combination of those is a decent pair if you are just playing alone. That is something to keep in mind. Those are regular old tank compositions, nothing much talked about to death. You can find plenty of other stuff, but I want to talk about some new stuff, right? That's the fun stuff. So getting it out of the way, let's just say it. Any Overwatch 2 tank, any new one with either Zarya or D.Va, probably going to be pretty good for you, right? Now, do not actually don't watch that. That doesn't matter. So, what is the idea here? It's the same thing, right, with Winston and all of them, but you're gonna do it a different way, right? So with the Doomfist here, you're seeing that I have a Zarya. It's a little bit more feast or famine, right? I go in, the second I get there, I'm going to need my Zarya to give me the bubble so I can just try to get a kill, and then use my other CDs to get out and use my block to sustain a little bit, keep a little bit of that in. When that is happening, my team hopefully will be walking up behind me, but I don't think this one is nearly as good because Doomfist doesn't get to stay in very long. And the whole idea is that the off tank is there to allow you to continue your pressure. And Doomfist pressure, in my opinion, doesn't quite work like regular main tanks do. He's a really weird option. So instead, you know, my D.Va actually, my Zarya rather, decides to swap to D.Va. This actually does help a little bit more because it gives me a little bit more time to get my CDs back before I leave. I actually ended up preferring this when I played with between the two. I think Zarya is just a little too much. I think D.Va helps with the slower style because Doom also, he can play slower, and I think D.Va just being able to check the angles to allow Doomfist to get better engages and real slams, definitely a good thing. Eventually I find that the Doomfist is just not going to work, so in this VOD we also have me swapping over to Mauga. Now Mauga and Zarya I think is a very, very good combination, but you do have to be very careful when you are playing this combo because you do not want to be stacking Bubble and Cardiac, right? And in fact, you probably shouldn't even be stacking Bubble when he is running in. Bubble should only be when he doesn't have Overrun or Cardiac, right? It's a good way to keep him in the fight, keep him healed up, right? So Mauga's going to run in, boom. He's going to demand the bubble. I got the bubble right there. And then if somebody were still there, I would be doing Cardiac, right? That's kind of what we are looking for in that regard. But it's pretty simple. It keeps him in the fight longer. And you also could tell I had a Life Weaver in this one, so I was also getting pulled out when I needed it. Now, I end up swapping to Orisa here with the D.Va, because Orisa is a little slower. She's going to be a little more sustainable. You know, Mauga's a little more like run in there, get all in. D.Va's not going to be able to keep up. So with Mauga, you can give him the bubble, and that will give him a lot more, give him time, or his backline time, to get to a spot where they're going to be able to help him. Orisa gives me the range, so D.Va is going to be a decent pick here, because we can play slower. Zara, who is this? Orisa is not going to be going that far. And she, what's else? She helps me a lot. Now, you saw the D.Va right there. I think she was playing that a little poorly. Not great resource management, because I was kind of forced to use my Fortify because I was afraid I was going to get hooked. But you can see my D.Va is actually attempting to DM me. That is not what you want, right? You want to be able to Orisa. I think the best thing you can do with Orisa is spin in. You have your D.Va come in behind you. After the spin, you DM. And then once that DM is over, you fortify. While you're fortifying, DM gets to come back. Once that fortify is over, DM is here. Once the DM is here, the spin should be very, very close. And that is a very good way to cycle it. So those are pretty classic examples as well. I think that Sigma would probably be a decent pick with Orisa as well. When Ori is just trying to hold space, he kind of gives the shield to her for her to play around. But probably not as good as the D.Va, I don't think, with this iteration of Orisa. Now, those are pretty standard, kind of how we understand Overwatch as it is today. I want to give you a couple of new examples. I want to give you a couple of new things that you can try. There are any number of things that you can try. You can go try your Mauga Queen. You can go try, I don't know, Hog Hazard. You know, there's plenty of things. I'm going to give you a couple of just 3 examples of interesting compositions that I think don't necessarily, they play similarly to other things, but kind of outside of the just main tank off tank idea. So here I am playing Hazard on King's Row with a Reinhardt. Now, Hazard does not have anything that particularly protects Reinhardt and allows him to be more aggressive like a Zarya or a D.Va. But what Hazard does provide is very good high ground control like D.Va, but he actually can protect Reinhardt somewhat from the high ground, and he can then get into positions to go brawl. I think what D.Va struggles at is that she can't really go in there and brawl and be like a really big disruption in 6v6. Hazard really can, because he has his block and everything. So D.Va will be eating to enable Reinhardt, but you are actually going to be kind of ping-ponging the, the distraction, right? Reinhardt's going to be taking some of it. Once he's taking too much, you go in there and you become the thing that they have to deal with, so Reinhardt can go and chill, right? So I think this is like a really good thing. Like, look at this choke here, right? So I'm watching Reinhardt. Reinhardt's kind of the bait. But then their Reinhardt walks in, I wall it off, and then I come in from the back, and I can turn around because I have that sustain. I can quickly turn around and block if I need to. And then I try and push their Reinhardt in and get a lot of damage going as well, right? Why has my screen gone black? Okay, I've tabbed out, but it doesn't matter. So that is one thing, right? And then I go back up to the high ground, and I make sure that that's something that Reinhardt cannot do, right? Is bully the high ground. And since this map is also like pretty close and has a lot of chokes, I think Hazard works really well because he has the wall, his jump doesn't go too far, there's a lot of high ground for him to start on. So long as your Reinhardt isn't getting too aggressive, right? And I think this is also like part of it. We are not playing a fast comp. We aren't playing like a super, like a Lucio. We're playing like an Ana Juno, which can play slower. Yes, you could play faster if you're just going for extreme bio nades, which, you know, we're not communicating with them. But we can play slower. We can play a little more methodical, and that can wait for me to get the opportunity, because it's going to be really hard for them to try and get me off of my perch as Hazard. And that, I think, is a very, very underrated element there. So I do like this as like a what's it called, an option that you don't necessarily always have to have an off tank. The thing about this, though, is that I find it is the best when not on a map like what's it called, like these symmetrical maps. I think in these asymmetrical maps, these kind of things work really, really well, because you can set up, especially on defensive, it's easier to set up, get ready for it. You don't need to push into terrible positions, right? You don't have to worry about all of your angles. That's where this kind of comes into play. Now, there's a couple of other things, you know, Earth Shatter, Wall can give Reinhardt pretty good Earth Shatters, but also Hazard is really good at following up on Earth Shatters. That is something as well. I'm trying to think what else here. Reinhardt has trouble closing the distance, but Hazard can actually boot people into Reinhardt. Of course, the wall allows them to stay with the Reinhardt, right? Or Reinhardt to keep up with them because they can't go away. That is also something that's really valuable. If you don't want to run a Mei, then you don't have to. You can focus on raw damage and let Hazard be that kind of utility. I think that is also something that's really viable as well. You see, I'm just going to stay up here and bully this high ground for a long time because there's a lot that I can do, right? I see like this Sojourn. I'm pretty sure at one point I jumped down thinking I might be able to get her, and I actually decided to just leave, right? So I'm just like living in their minds rent free, right? They're afraid of me. They're trying not to walk out to where I'm going to be able to assassinate them. And that is really valuable. There's a shatter. I just wasn't ready for it, but I could have gone in and booped them back into the team. There is something, I think, right at the end here that I thought was really fun interaction here. Yeah. So I got my ult canceled. Don't look at that. I wasn't supposed to show you that. But this is really good stall as well. I think that's something to note, is that there's a lot that they have to worry about with Reinhardt and me, and since we're both pretty sustainy with our shields and our block, we have really good stall, especially on defense points like this. But what I actually really wanted to show you is this right here. Some fun stuff you can do. Look at that. Reinhardt shatters him. I come in from the back because I'm kind of playing the field. I'm playing up and back whenever I can. I just come in, secure that kill, somewhat wins us the fight. Very fun. I think this is a really cool combination that you should try, because Reinhardt needs new buddies, right? He's had people always like, oh, it's Rein Zarya. Try something new, guys. Try it. We have the world is our oyster, right? All right, next I want to show you kind of like an unconventional pairing, and I understand what this is going to look like. It's going to look like double shield, and I want you to know that that is not exactly what we're doing here. So this is Ramattra and Sigma. Now, I like to think that this comp plays like old double shield, but not like stacking on each other and just spamming, but more so the team-based, like, kind of like, how do I describe this? On old Voskaya, there was a strategy you would do. You would hold both high grounds, and you would have half your team here, 1-1-1, right? I think that Ramattra is a very good substitute for old Orisa, because not only does he have okay range threat, he has very good close range threat as well. If you pair him with a Kiri and some other DPS to offset his range, then it becomes really hard to dislodge him, right? But also, if Ramattra needs to take a brawl, I think that a lot of pairings with Ramattra, like Zarya or D.Va, you stack a lot of the sustain that you have, right? So Nemesis mode is the sustain that keeps him in the fight, but it's also his very aggressive playmaking potential, right? And putting a bubble on him while he's in Nemesis mode, I feel like that is stacking your defensive cooldowns, the ones that are going to keep you in the fight, and I don't think that's actually going to be as good as you think it is. However, if Ramattra plays around a Sigma shield properly, he can weave in his blocks and be really aggressive with it, and not necessarily have to break the Sigma shield so much. And since Sigma also has his own sustain, he can come in there and use his hands and protect him that way if he needs to, but he can also use it to protect himself on his own angle. I think there's a lot that you can do here. You know how I said about ping-ponging with the Reinhardt Hazard? This is where you actually ping-pong the point. I don't know how I got shattered here. I was pissed off about it. You should be too. But you kind of ping-pong the point, right? So especially on, like, let's say Eichenwalde first. We're on defense there. And I'm on one side, my Ramattra's on the other. He's going to go touch the point. He throws his shield down. He does his little staff. Then he Nemesis modes and he blocks and whatever. And we're stalling. Once they're, like, pushing him out, that's my time to go to the other side, go put up my shield, play around it, put up my hands, wait for the shield to come back, put the shield back up. By that time, Ramattra should be coming back on Nemesis mode or his shield or something like that. And then you just kind of like, okay, now it's your turn. And hopefully your supports are helping you out, the right person at the right time. That kind of stuff, right? I think that is what's particularly interesting about this duo, is that they don't necessarily have to play stacks, but they can. They have a lot of options depending on the point and depending on the composition surrounding them. I think that Sigma is the best off tank to help Ram especially if you aren't trying to play super duper fast and you are okay with playing a little bit slower, a little more methodical like that. And that's also, like, I wanted to highlight some of the comps that aren't just, like, run them down, unga bunga type stuff, you know, Mauga running in and getting a bubble, or Queen shouting in, getting a bubble. A lot of them come down to somebody running in and getting a bubble, and I think there's more to it than that. Who knows, maybe this will be, like, a really boring comp, but actually, like, this game in particular, it felt like we were losing all the points, or it felt really hard. But they couldn't kill us, and it was really hard to actually get stuff done from them. I'm going to show you something that I'm just going to flex real quick, because I am vain. Look at this Reinhardt. I put my shield down. He says, oh, it's my time. No, sir. Now, did the Kiri cleanse it and I missed it? The world may never know, but I'm gonna give this one to myself. But yeah, anyways, that is Ramattra Sigma. I think you should look out for that, and I do not think it's a double shield comp. Traditionally, I don't think it would play like that. Don't worry. Finally, I have another interesting one. So I think Wrecking Ball is kind of like a, especially in Overwatch 1, he can play a lot of different types of positions and roles and everything. But I think that Hazard is definitely like the jack of all trades, right? He kind of does everything. And Ball can kind of slot into the main tank or the off tank slot, depending on what you're doing. Not necessarily playing like an off tank, but the reason why I bring this up is that Hazard, Ball, they're both pretty flexible. So what you could actually do with this composition is that you can change depending on where you are, especially if there's a map type that is like somewhat narrow, somewhat open. You know, Hazard struggles in the open, Ball can cross it very easily. Hazard is really good close range. Ball is, you know, it's hard for him to get in and out just because of his speed and everything. So what you can do is kind of like flip-flop and be like, okay, so Ball's going to be the initiator of this fight because we're set up like this. Hazard is going to need space because he's too far away. Let's do Ball first. Or we have the attack, right? We have the position. Let's actually do Hazard be the initiator, Ball kind of just trying to get something off of it. This was an incredibly well-executed opening there with the wall coming in and me doing the slam. That's also something really interesting, right? Is that you can set each other up very well. That's why I didn't include like Doom Ball, because Slam and Punch have a little bit of like counter synergy, because Punch knocks them up and Doom just goes straight with the punch. Very often it can lead to Doom missing Punch because of the Slam. You would have to like hit the punch the second the Slam hits, and I think that's much too precise. And I wouldn't really count on that. So I actually think that this is a better disruption, right? So Ball goes in and disrupts. The wall, also very good disruption. Ball can, what's it called? Knock people back in. Or sorry, Hazard can knock people back in. You know, Ball can slam in. He can go hit him with the slash, knock them into the team. He can use wall to knock them into the team. There's a lot that you can do. I think there's a lot of interesting combinations here. Ball can take a lot of distraction, then Hazard can go in and take a lot of distraction, right? I wouldn't play this like with a Brig Zen. I think this requires a little bit more resources. Here you're seeing we have like Moira for whatever reason. Moira, what's it called? Ana, I think Ana is a really good pick with this. I was playing into Zen. Zen Sombra. It was getting hard to adjust to this. I was playing a little too aggressively here. But I think you kind of see the idea here, right? Where they both can do very similar jobs, but since they have different strengths and weaknesses, they can kind of offset them depending on where they are. And I think Runasapi is a very good map for this, because there's a couple of close positions where you can hold pretty effectively. There's a couple of pretty long sightlines that are much harder to actually get value out of. So when the long sightlines are there, that's my job to make sure Hazard can get in. And then when it isn't like that, it is now Ball's job to make sure that the disruption stays and that he continues to make a lot of noise to allow our team to create angles and stuff like that. Ball's also really good at checking angles as well. That is something you can do when Hazard gets to take the initiator position there. So yeah, that's it. In fact, please, if you like this video, subscribe. But I do want to hear back from you. What are your favorite comps so far? You know, what are your combinations? Anything completely new, completely wacky? Maybe Queen Hog is lit and we don't even know it yet. Or maybe you're into the traditional stuff. Maybe you think that Sig or Risa is still very good. I'd love to hear back from you guys. Like the video while you're at it. I do really appreciate it. This was streamed live, twitch.tv/LaneHemingway. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I've been playing live. I will be off next week because it is the holiday, but come the new year, we are going to be on that schedule probably nothing stopping me from doing that, so please join in, get in on these discussions as they happen, and join my Discord down below. Again, the new year is coming, new plans are coming, new projects are coming. Keep up to date with all of those down there as well in the Discord. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching, and please have a good day.